Welcome to the worldwide free seminar of the Family Dog Project, live from Budapest. The event is proudly sponsored by Purina.
Hello and welcome to my presentation. I'm going to talk about the research which has been done so far on family dogs, what we do know or do not know at the moment about their cognitive aging. And just to stress out this at the very beginning of my talk, this presentation is based on a review paper we got published this year. Therefore, we collected data from many studies and looked for connections between them, but these experiments have been conducted by others. The first thing you may want to ask from yourself when you start to think about aging is why do we have to get old at all? Is it some kind of inevitable program? And is there no way to escape it? Is it hardly encoded in our genes, or is it simply an error which is happening after a certain amount of time? And if we can fix this problem, then we can stay young forever. This is important because if you want to investigate cognitive aging, actually you have to first live long enough to start to show signs of aging. And in nature, this is usually not the case, because if wild animals start to show signs of deterioration, usually that's the end of their lifespan, because nature is really cruel in this regard. Unlike in case of family dogs living with us, who we can provide all the necessary care when they get old, and we can nurture them even when they wouldn't be able to survive on their own anymore. And aging is actually an issue where size does matter. So whereas in case of different species, you can say that larger animals actually do live longer. So if you think about the mouse and the elephant does certainly live longer. But within a species, the picture is reversed. Actually, within a species like the dog, the larger animals have a shorter lifespan than the smaller ones. So if you start to think about an old dog, probably you have one at the moment, or at least you had one in the past. You know what are the things you can expect. For instance, your dog is less likely to play fetch with you, although she loved to do it earlier. But if you want to pinpoint what is the reason behind that change in behavior, it can get challenging, because your dog may have some mobility issues. Maybe it's painful for her to run after the ball. Maybe she has some sensory issues and simply she couldn't see that you had a ball in your hand or you threw it away. And maybe she is suffering from dementia and simply she cannot really remember at the moment what is she supposed to do with a ball. When you want to investigate aging in dogs, the next question that pops into your mind is that actually from what age is a dog considered to be old? And this is an issue when we are seemingly on a disagreement, because it's hard to say whether large dogs who have a shorter lifespan start to age, get old earlier, whether their aging process is fastened in a way, or whether they simply do not live long enough to get actually old, and whether it's fair to compare, for instance, a 10-year-old Great Dane to a 10-year-old Border Collie, or are they at different stages of their aging process. The next challenge we have to deal with when we want to investigate aging in family dogs is that actually as they get older, dogs get more and more affected by sensory impairments. This data is from a study we did this year. We simply asked the owners whether they think their dog is suffering from sensory impairments, such as loss of sight or hearing. And what you can see that while this problem is not prevalent among young dogs, as they get older, more and more dogs seems to be affected. And if you have a look at really old dogs, so for instance over 12 years, actually you really have to look for those ones who are still healthy in this regard and can participate, for instance, in an experiment when they would need to pay attention to something, to watch something you show them. The most information we have about cognitive aging of dogs comes from laboratory beagle studies. From these studies, we do know that actually they start to show signs of cognitive aging really soon. This is already detectable at the age of 6 to 8 years. Their performance in various learning and memory experiments starts to deteriorate. These experiments usually look like this one on the picture. So there are multiple objects in front of the dog, and based on some rule, the dog is supposed to select one object or the other, and it can even get more complicated when the dog first is trained to select the black one, for instance, and then the rule is reversed, and from now on, the dog is supposed to select the white one instead of the previously preferred black one. And another aspect we do know from these studies is that some dogs actually age better than others. Dogs kept in the same environment from the same breed age differently. The ones which seem to cope well with this process are called healthy agers usually, while the others who show really signs of deterioration and after a while simply become unable to learn new tasks are called the ones who are suffering from pathological aging processes. And of course, we are very keen to find out that what may lead to cognitive decline in dogs. Of course, this is cognition, so the most likely suspect is the brain, that something is going south within the brain. And as you can see, in laboratory beagles, we do know what happens as they age. The brain basically starts to shrink. You can see these holes are getting bigger. Actually, these holes are the ventricles. And you can imagine that as there is less and less brain actually which is remaining, the functions are deteriorating as well. And what you can also see that in some cases, some individuals look older in regard of their brain as their chronological age would suggest. And in this case, of course, you can also be quite sure that this dog also has some cognitive issues in these learning experiments which she did. So this is solved, yes, because we have these nice looking pictures from dogs at different age, and we can just compare our dog's brain to this picture and find out whether her brain is a match for the age or not. Well, the problem is that we don't only have beagles as family dogs, we have dogs with various head shape and head size, and as a result, their brain shape is also different, and we do not have data for different breeds how their aging brain looks like at the moment. When you go to the vet concerned about your old dog's behavior, usually you're not really worried about things like she is scoring worse in a reverse learning task, she is learning new things slower, but you're actually concerned about things that your dog seems to forget, some rules that she was really fine with earlier, like the loss of signaling. Your dog looks like she's forgetting that she was house trained once. And these signs are associated with a syndrome called the cognitive dysfunction syndrome, which is described as an Alzheimer-like disease in dogs. And the symptoms can be very heterogeneous, so it can mean that the appetite of your dog recently changed. But the signs can be also very severe, like your dog is not able to recognize you, the owner, anymore, or the dog cannot navigate out of corners or behind objects anymore, which is, of course, a huge welfare issue, and it makes the everyday life very complicated for the owner and the dog. And from questionnaire studies, we also know that the prevalence of this problematic behavior is growing as the dogs get older. So, for instance, from this study, we can suspect that dogs about 15 years old, so that these dogs, half of these dogs already show these signs of pathological condition. And as more and more dogs live long lives, we can expect that more and more owners will see these signs in their dogs too. And what about the physiological measurements? Can we track the aging process with them as well? Do we have data which suggest that older dogs actually do feel about the world in a different way? We have some studies which suggest that as the dogs get older, actually they become less able to cope with stress. In a study with German Shepherd police dogs, they found that older dogs were more stressed based on the rise of the cortisol level than younger dogs when put in the same situation when a threatening stranger approached them. And this was corroborated by another study on family dogs, which showed that older family dogs were more stressed in a separation situation where they were left alone in a room compared to younger dogs in the same situation. And last but not least, as you could see, we know quite a few bits of information and pieces about laboratory dog. We have some data on family dogs, but there are still many things we would like to investigate further in the following years, things we need to know to provide the best care for our aging pet. One is that we are not sure what level of cognitive decline is still normal. What are the signs to look out for? Which are the behaviors which can be alarming and which require assistance or intervention in case or in form of veterinary exam and so on? And what are the signs that you don't really have to worry for because they are more or less natural and occurring in every aging dog? We do not have data whether dog breeds differ in regard to cognitive aging, whether some breeds start to show signs of cognitive decline earlier, and whether this is affected by the expected lifespan on the dogs, because as I mentioned, the large dogs have a shorter lifespan. We would also like to find out that what are the most important aspects which help you to preserve your bond with your old dog, because if the last year of your relationship are affected by things like your dog cannot really have a relationship with you anymore because she's simply not recognizing you, then this is really a severe issue which would be very good to find out about more and probably offer some possible solutions. And we also have to find out when do we do actually good for our dogs. When we just let our old dogs have a peaceful life and don't bother them with teaching new tricks and going to the dog park because it may be more stressful to them as it used to be? Or is it the other way around, that actually when we start to see the signs of aging in our dogs, we still should push with these things we previously did with the dog, because actually this kind of cognitive capacity can work in a way that either you use it or lose it. And maybe next year we will be able to provide you some insights also into these questions, but until then, I thank you for your attention.